corporate responsibility. Now, is it the task of the communications department, classic, or the human capital department? And these people are very often passionate champions of CR in the company, so nothing wrong with them. Or should it really be on the agenda of the CEO? And if so, why? Well, diversity and all that, maybe I go ladies first, and I'll may as well play safe. And I'll go to the lady on my immediate left, and then to Irene. So,
thank you, Dr. Johan, and thank you for having us here. As far as Astro, I'll speak on behalf of Astro because that's where I work, but as far as Astro is concerned, as Dr. Johan mentioned, Astro is a relatively young company. We're a 12-year-old company. We launched our services in September 1996, so we're relatively young. And I think we're not as young, and I was told just now before I came into the room that CSR and CR has started in the 70s, but I believe in terms of awareness within the Malaysian marketplace, that's relatively new. And you can call it CSR or you can call it CR, but it's a label. From our perspective at Astro, I think everyone has in their own way, every company has in their own way been actually doing some form of corporate responsibility projects, CSR projects in each and every company. But I think where the CEO needs to play a role is to emphasize that it needs to be looked at holistically, and it has to be embedded in the DNA of the organization, not just deemed as individual projects which are sort of disconnected to the rhyme and reason and the reason for being of the actual company. And that's where I feel that the CEO has a role to play in pulling it all together, in embedding it in our strategies and everyday lives. And like everything we do in terms of strategies and initiatives, I believe it can't be owned by the CEO per se. It has to be owned by the organization, just like anything else. So it has to be, the agenda has to be set by the CEO, the tone has to be set by the CEO, but the ownership has to be by the whole organization. And that's how I think we believe in Astro, and that's how we're actually looking at CR or CSR, how we can holistically embed it in our day-to-day lives.
Oh, good morning, and thank you. I feel I ought to leave as the only lawyer on the stage, but there we are. I think it's interesting because Astro is relatively new. HSBC is very old and has been around for 160-something years, all told, around the world. And whilst I would agree with everything that has just been said, I think that the CEO's role is vital in all of this because buy-in is not really quite sufficient. It has to be more of a walk the talk from the CEO. In HSBC, I think we have a reputation for nearly all of our CEOs around the world having a platform on this in their own country. And I think that the reason for this is it actually comes from the very top. Stephen Green, our group chairman, and all of our colleagues in head office are entirely bought into this, so much so that it is a fundamental part of our brand. And our strategic plan, our current strategic plan, which is now some 4 years or 3 years gone, when it was first written, it was circulated around the entire organization and clearly was on the intranet, and colleagues could flip on to shortened PowerPoint presentations and inform themselves of the highlights. The very opening words were from Stephen Green, and what they actually said was, making profit is no longer enough. We aim to be a leader, and we have actually swept up all of these different aspects such as responsibility, the social aspects, the charitable aspects, and we have swept it up into a statement of sustainability. And I actually think this is a journey. You don't flip a coin and suddenly turn into the most responsible organization in the world. You can't tell people to do this. It has to be something about buy-in and DNA throughout the whole organization. But the CEO's role, as in all leadership issues, is that unless you are seen to be doing it and living it yourself, then you don't really stand much of a chance of the rest of the organization doing it. And the worst thing, in my opinion, that a CEO can do is say one thing and then do something completely different. I'm afraid as bankers, there's a little phrase that we say which is words and figures differ, which refers to the face of checks. And that's actually true in everyday life. If words and figures differ on this, you won't get it all the way down through the organization. And then just one last thing I'd say is the reason we say sustainability is because that has an appeal right across the whole of the bank, whether you're talking about sustainable activity of a charitable nature in communities, or fitting people for sports because that's a sustainable, healthy activity that groups people together, or whether you're talking about sustainable lending policies to make sure that the bank is not involved in business that does not create sustainable business going forward. You can actually then redefine it for every part of the bank. So there's a communication thing going on here as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Dr. Krishnan, would you like to...
I'm not going to throw age, but we are somewhere in between. Relatively new company, and as you know, we're in the construction business. So, and if you look at the growth of most construction businesses, we started as small outfits, and therefore, if you have talked to them CSR or CR some time ago, they probably ask what the hell it's all about. I think that over time you evolve, and I would say that. Most CEOs in corporate Malaysia has been driving some aspects of CSR. It's probably not in the all-encompassing framework that you see today. You've got to tick off to see that you have done something for community and things like that. But it's evolving. So I think that engagement of CEOs in various aspects of CR or CSR is already happening. Even if you take our company, for example, we have, early stages, of course, charity or corporate philanthropy is what you talk about. CSR was all about. But if you look at what we have been, or the founders have been trying to do, for example, in terms of corporate governance, without using the word corporate governance, we used to, until we coined this word, conscionable ethics. You would want to run the business properly, honestly. And that kind of things are already ingrained in our professionals from day one. So until somebody started writing about conscionable ethics within inverted commas, dark, and put it into the annual report, it's already been practiced. So a lot of these areas are already there. It's just that now you have to, because stakeholders rather than shareholders out there are saying that, hey, we want you to calculate a return on stakeholders' equity. Meaning it may not be in dollars, but you need to identify what you're doing for society in various aspects. That we now realize, or rather the realization that CEOs must play a bigger role. Otherwise, if you just leave it within the organization, some aspects of it will get done very well. I'm sure if you ask my staff, they will enjoy all the sports activities that we have in our company for socializing. But when you come to enforce safety regulations and, for example, ISO quality regulations, and you have to deal with Indonesian workers who don't value their life and probably don't care about the quality, then it's a different game altogether, where you need to then be more of a, I don't know what you will call it, enforcer, rather than an inspirational leader or whatever you want to call that. So on the whole, I think that in corporate Malaysia we have it in various forms. I think the CR or CSR framework that Bursa has come out with 2006 provides a fairly good framework for people to actually look at and say what does it encompass in total, and therefore try to look at it in a more holistic manner than just the individual initiatives which you will leave it to either your corporate comm department or to your company secretary to drive.
Thank you, Dr. Johan, and thank you to the staff for having me here today. And I have quite a few of our GLC CEOs here, so I don't know whether that was a social obligation on your part or...
It's definitely an obligation.
We can negotiate, no problem. I completely agree and a half with whatever's already said. Indeed, buy in, DNA, walk the talk, all those things is absolutely right. And obviously, CEOs need to lead from the front. And indeed, Irene, your point about figures and words need to be one, and obviously. I thought I'll broaden it slightly, if I may, at the outset. Especially if when the S got dropped from CSR to CR, I understood that to mean a very major, not scope creep, but scope, installation, if you like, going back to its roots, which covers ethics and governance, right? So I think Katie spoke about ethics, and absolutely. So the moment you put in ethics, governance at the heart of it, then obviously this goes all the way up to the CEO. But I think even beyond that, really, I think a more fundamental question is what is the purpose of corporations? What do corporations exist for? I think is an even more fundamental question. This debate between what some call the shareholder economy versus the stakeholder economy is something that kind of oscillates, over time. I think we noted after Enron, for example, where the corporation, the reputation of corporations, which were, not great to begin with in the area of driving societies and communities, and it took an even bigger drop, and hence the move. First, there was more regulation, but there was also the move towards more pendulum swinging towards a stakeholder economy. And I think it has stayed there, and it will continue to stay there for a while because of the state of the world today. The planet, there's so many problems. There's so many problems in the planet, you name it. One of it is obviously, widening income and wealth differentials, for example. So really, against that backdrop of shareholder versus stakeholder economy, I think stakeholder economy will remain with us for a long time, and my view is rightly so. And then you have to put that in the context of the globe, where people now, there's so many problems on the planet that it has to be solved. You can't rely on governments alone. You can't rely on corporations alone, and corporations obviously get more responsibility as corporations get bigger and more powerful. And you can't rely on NGOs alone. So this word collaboration keeps coming back. And this is really the space of CR where I think none of us are going to solve this on our own. We've got to solve this together. And just a final point that I saw a survey about a year ago. This was an international survey across many countries. So this is not a political statement or whatever. They found that the most distrusted profession is actually politicians. But before the CEOs laugh, not far behind are CEOs actually, including myself, I suppose. So I think this culture of cynicism, etc. So if anything, is for self-survival, but I like to think it's beyond that why we should do CR. I like to think it's beyond that. And really in the context of a planet with many problems, and in the context of social equity and growth with equity, etc. I just like to say, and because CEOs are so closely identified with that agenda, then obviously, all that kind of ties in. Thank you.